This conference will now be recorded.
And I'm just going to write down a few names, and then we'll get going. Len, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Rick. How are you? Hey, does anyone else have a bunch of first and last name initials on the main area of the screen like I do? I've never seen this before. You know, like Hollywood squares, everybody's got a little square, and even people who don't have their video cams on, which right now seems to be just me and you and Sylvester, but I see initials like DS, MF, PF, JH. No one else sees this?
You need a new computer, Len.
I got to stop smoking that magic mushroom, I guess.
I see the same thing. All three here.
I see the same thing, Lynn.
Oh, thank you.
I got him.
Oh, well, that's interesting because I certainly don't see that. And
you show up, Rick, as RD under your picture.
yes, yeah.
And Len is only Len now instead of Len Sierra. So I guess somebody renamed themselves on the. But everybody else shows up okay on mine.
But you're not seeing a whole bunch of different squares.
No.
Like, no, okay. So I'm just busy writing names down so I can do a roll call. Okay. So let me see who I'll call out who I see here. It's quite likely that I've missed some names, but Jake. Oh yeah, how about Len? I didn't put.
Hey,
Len.
Len, if you click at the top of the screen where it says View Active Camera or View Everyone, if you click View Active Camera, you'll see the normal way we usually see it.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, you're right. That's a new feature.
All right. Okay.
Where's that?
Try it.
It's at the top middle of my screen anyway.
Oh, view everyone. There it is. I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a different control panel. So anyway, let me go through Len, Jake, Daryl Levenberg, Dennis, Jerry Pelfrey, Ken Anderson, Le Shelderup, Paul Frieda, Sylvester, and R.H. Smith. Anybody that I missed?
Me.
Oh, Marguerite. Geez, sorry, Marguerite. Okay. Yes.
Welcome, Marguerite.
That was a welcome from Len, Marguerite.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't quite hear all that clearly. So thanks, Len. Appreciate that.
Well, glad to have you on the call.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think we've got anybody new. So we'll get underway. We'll get underway with the people that we have here and see who needs some time. Just tell me if you need some time. We don't have to get into what for, but I just need to know who needs to speak so we can sort of roughly pass out the time today. So Marguerite, since we forgot you and you were the first one on, would you like some time today?
Yes, please.
Okay. Len, anything for you?
No, Rick.
Okay.
No,
Jake, how about you?
Not for me. Thank you.
Okay. Daryl, would you like to give us a little update on your situation?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, perfect. Great. Hi, Marguerite. Hi, everybody. Haven't spoken to a lot of you in quite a while, probably since January.
Yeah,
so,
at least.
Welcome
Yes,
back.
it's been, thank you. So,
Okay.
you want me
Okay,
to do
well,
this now, Rick, or later?
no, later. We'll come. I'm just going to see
Later.
who needs some time, and then we'll come back
No
to you.
problem.
Dennis, would you like some time today?
No, thank you, Rick.
Okay. Jerry Pelfrey, would you like to fill us in on anything today?
No, not today. Just
Are you sure?
status quo.
Status quo. Okay. Ken Anderson, anything for you? Well, you have an update, I know.
Well, I can share the update, but I wanted to say thanks to Lynn for the help and the information and say hey to Daryl.
Thank you,
yeah.
man.
Hi, Ken. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Ken.
Les Shelderup, anything for you today? Les?
Not today, thank you. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. We hear you
Okay,
great.
I said it once and was
Oh,
blank.
we didn't get it the first time.
Okay.
No worries. Larry Fish, anything for you today?
No, thank you, Rick.
Okay.
I've got the mute.
Paul Frieda, anything for you?
Yes, I've got a few things to talk about.
Okay. R.H. Smith, anything for you?
Well, FYI, it's RC, not RH, but
Oh, sorry, RC.
I've actually got
Yes.
That's fine. It's I've got my appointment with Vogelzang tomorrow, so I'll probably want some time next week, but don't really need it today.
Well, we'll maybe touch base with you so that we can go through a few of the questions that you need to focus in with him. So, because
That would be great.
Yeah, I think it's probably worthwhile. And Sylvester, anything for you?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I have right now Marguerite, Daryl, Ken, Paul Frieda, and R.C. Smith. So we will we'll cover all of you and then see what happens from there. Okay, so let's most of you, or some, not most of you, many of you on the call know Marguerite. And it was actually through Marguerite we found Daryl.
Exactly.
So,
Thank you.
and others. So, Marguerite, tell us what's going on with Tony, and I hope he wasn't misbehaving those 6 weeks that you were in England.
No, actually, he was remarkably well behaved.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah, no, he's actually he's doing really well right now.
Right.
And for those of you who maybe don't know, Tony, probably most of you don't know, Tony had to have a pacemaker put in January, which came as a big shock to both of us, because I think if ever there was anyone, or not, I mean, obviously there's a lot of very healthy guys out there, but you know, he has no heart disease in his family, no heart issues at all. And he's 66 now, and he started, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer 15 years ago when he was 49. And he's been through, you know, the prostatectomy, the radiation, and he's had 3 ADT treatments, intermittent, and he was on. He was doing. We had decided, as he was on his 3rd ADT treatment of Lupron, Casodex, and cypertone acetate, that he would do the treatment for 18 months, because prior to that, it'd always been 9 months. So a year into the treatment, he was experiencing extreme fatigue, which we just put down to the drug. But it turned out it wasn't so. It was actually, I mean, we're not, you know, everyone, all the doctors all shrugged their shoulders, but we're pretty sure it was a result, a side effect of the ADT drugs. because the fatigue was extreme. Anyway, long story short, he had the pacemaker put in, and he now says he feels 10 years younger, which is wonderful. But at the same time, it was a year after of being on ADT, he came off the drug because he just needed the break. So, what happened since he came off the Lupron, Casodex, and cypretone acetate, which was in mid-January? It's now 3 months, and his PSA is now detectable, which has never happened before. But we also understand that it's the course of, the progression of prostate cancer, that, the length and the time off decreases. So when we got the last PSA, and it registered at just detectable at 0.05, and his testosterone was 0.06. His oncologist at Princess Margaret wants to put him back on Lupron immediately, because he said he wants to suppress the testosterone. So that has come as a bit of a shock, because we thought at least we would, Tony would get a break, and we would watch the PSA, and all that, and then decide if and when he goes back on it. So it's sort of been a bit of a game changer. So now we're sort of looking at the situation, realizing, the other concern is that Tony's PSA has doubled every 2 months, has been doubling over 2 months. And so, that's the other big worry is, with an aggressive doubling time, what exactly should we do? And should we, at this stage, without determining if he is castrate resistant, because we don't know yet, should we be at this stage be looking at the second generation drugs? And if so, which ones? I mean, Len has very kindly advised and thought that we should go with Zytiga, but with the heart condition, is that going to be safe? So, excuse me, I just have a bit of a sore throat here. So I'm sort of wondering if anybody could possibly shed light and give an opinion on what they think we need to do at this stage.
Mm-hmm. And where, what do you see, or what do the scans indicate in terms of spread of the disease?
Well, because his PSA was undetectable for I'd say 7 months. I mean, it took, when Tony started back on the third ADT, it actually took about 5 months before he went to undetectable. But, that's another, I guess, concern. But we understand it's the progress of the cancer. He has not had any scans. Apart from he had a bone scan, which was, in fact, his bones were really good. But the last scan he had, which was about 2 years ago, he had the gallium 68.
Mm-hmm.
But this is before he went back on the ADT. But since then, he hasn't had any scans because the PSA has been undetectable.
Okay. Well, Len, why don't you, I know you and I talked a little bit at the time that we learned about Tony's heart monitor, specifically about what are the risks, the cardio risks of ADT, and it might just be helpful for the guys on the call for us to review that, and then just interested in hearing your thoughts and why you like the idea of Zytiga, and then we'll open it up.
Rick, I don't recall saying that I like the idea of Zytiga for Tony specifically.
Oh, yeah, but this was actually then, just to clarify, this was well before the heart problem. The reason you said that was because you said that the fatigue issue with Xtandi was quite extreme, whereas with Zytiga and prednisone, you don't get the same degree of fatigue. And that is, I mean, obviously it's not applicable to everyone, but sort of generally speaking, which I have heard as well, that Zytiga on some guys produces a lot, tremendous fatigue. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense to me. Recommending it to Tony before we knew about his heart condition.
yeah.
Now that we do know about it, Zytiga may not be the right choice, because I do recall recently that there was a study showing that Zytiga increased the risk of ischemic heart disease and increased the risk of worsening cardiovascular conditions in patients who previously had ischemic heart disease or myocardial infarction. So given Tony's heart condition now, that probably would not be a good choice for him. But I think what Rick is referring to, and Marguerite, maybe you can even confirm, because you were involved, at least you and I were involved in discussions about the effects of ADT on heart health. And I think what we were focusing on was the fact that the LHRH agonists, things like Lupron, tended to have more higher cardiovascular risk than the LHRH antagonists like Firmagon. And the theory behind that, actually there was even a study, it wasn't just theory, that for whatever reasons the drugs like Lupron had, this was for men with pre-existing cardiac conditions, however, the Lupron tended to break loose the cardiovascular plaque in the vessels. The vascular plaque, and that once broken off, of course, this could cause strokes and myocardial infarction, whereas the antagonist did not seem to have that effect. So there's that. Let's see. Was there anything else that you recall?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the issue is, for someone like Tony, how quickly to go back on some type of ADT, and maybe at this point an antagonist might be better than the agonists, and what are our thoughts on second-line antiandrogens? And I think second-line antiandrogens are probably quite appropriate, given that Tony's gone through 3 cycles of intermittent. By the way, in the chat window, for those of you who are on the web, I put the link to this study that Len is referring to, that Zytiga may up the mortality risk of prostate cancer patients with a CVD history. So you can draw your own conclusions from reading the study. I guess the study was done. Yeah, it was done at Sidney Kimmel in Philadelphia, Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. You know, one thing I'm thinking of, Marguerite, is that you've probably heard Al Fat on this call.
Yeah, I did.
And Al's doing monotherapy apalutamide, which Len is quite familiar with too, because they share the same doctor. And I was just looking Friday. I was looking on Friday for one of the guys I work with who lives in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, and apalutamide has now been approved in Canada. Although for non-metastatic castrate-resistant, which is probably what we could justify Tony being, since they saw evidence of lymph node disease only, and it appears that he is castrate-resistant. And so, you know, then there's the opportunity that you might be able to see whether he could get the same type of response out of the apalutamide that Al Fat got, but I don't recall the doses Al Fat was on. I'd have to look at that. Do you, Len?
As far as I know, it was a standard dose.
Okay.
Are you meaning apalutamide as a monotherapy?
Well, you could try it. I mean, you know, Tony doesn't really want to be on the ADT, and if you could convince your doc, and I'm sure that whoever it is that would prescribe it, they could reach out to Dr. O, and if not, I'm sure that I could probably help to arrange that, or Len could help to arrange it. And it might be worth thinking about. I don't know. I mean, again, this isn't medical advice. This is just reporting what we've seen with at least one other guy who's doing monotherapy apalutamide. Elida.
Yeah, and that, I mean, yeah, I know. I actually, one of the oncologists here did say he could put Tony on apalutamide. So, you know, that's a worth a consideration.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably get some pushback from the oncologist if you said, what about apalutamide without the LHRH? But that's where we come into play with, you know, he can listen to Al Fat on our recording. You know, we could connect him to Dr. O, who is highly reputable, even though he does have Len as a patient. Anyone else want to chime in on this? I mean, what are other people's thoughts who have been on intermittent and are coming back on to having to look at picking up a treatment again?
Well, I agree with you, Rick. That monotherapy with apalutamide sounds like a particularly good option for Tony, because it avoids him having to take any LHRH agonist or antagonist that may cause or worsen his cardiovascular condition.
Right.
What would be even better, maybe getting ahead of everyone and myself here, but darolutamide, some of you may have heard of, is along the lines of apalutamide, that's being fast-tracked right now by the FDA. An NDA has been submitted in the U.S., and so far reports are that it causes less fatigue. In fact, no more fatigue than the patients on placebo. So I don't know what the status of that approval is in Canada, Marguerite, but in the U.S. they do expect it to be approved later this year.
Well, I can definitely look into that, because usually if the FDA approves it, it gets fast-tracked in Canada. So I will look into that for sure.
Yeah, but I think that however fast track it is, darolutamide hasn't even been approved in the States yet. So Tony's probably going to have to pick something up, within the next month or so. I mean, those of you who have been on intermittent hormone therapy, Len and anyone else on this call who has done intermittent hormone therapy, if there is anyone.
I'm in the middle of it right now, Paul.
Okay, there you go, Paul. So how do you decide when to pick up a treatment again? I mean, Len, this is really a question you've given a lot of consideration to.
Yeah. Well, two considerations. Rising PSA, which I have, although not rising precipitously. And the other thing, of course, is what's showing up on scans. And so far, the scans I've done, although not the most advanced, are not really picking up anything that would make me worry that I need to be back on ADT. But as anybody who's been on these calls knows by now, I've been on a waiting list for months to get into the NIH trial for DCF-PYL, which is supposed to be the most advanced scanning tool. It's also available at Yale, but I haven't reached, for Yale anyway, I haven't reached the PSA requirement, which is 2.0 or higher. So you want to keep an eye on how fast your PSA is rising and what, if anything, is being picked up on scans. Those are the things that are the most important, I think, in making a decision to get back on ADT.
And your PSA right now is at what level, Len?
1.28.
1.28. And Paul, how long have you been on intermittent, and where's your PSA right now?
My last Lupron shot was August last year, and my blood test, which I got today, shows my PSA is still 0.1, but my testosterone is now rising, and it's at 39.
Okay. And what sort of benchmarks have you set yourself in terms of when you might want to resume some sort of treatment?
I have no idea. I want to get information from as many people as possible about when that might be. I'm a Gleason 8, so I think that has something, would have some bearing on it. Len, what's your Gleason?
9.
9, yeah. So, if it's somewhat aggressive and the PSA is going to come back rather quickly, I might, need to jump back on Lupron. So I don't know.
So anybody on the call have any thoughts about about when somebody like Tony might return, given that they're just seeing PSA register again after 3 months? Does anybody have any input on that?
They have an idea of the doubling time, right? I think I heard some say.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Tony's oncologist has always looked at the doubling time.
What was
I'm sorry?
What is the doubling time that you're dealing with?
Well, historically, the last time, it was doubling every 2 months.
2 month doubling time.
So, yeah, that's pretty scary. So, but when he waited, and when he saw, I think because Tony gets blood tests done every 6 weeks. So, every 6 weeks when he was seeing the doubling time, that's when he, put him back on pretty quick. So, and I mean, I've got to agree with that, quite honestly. That's usually been the barometer. Because I don't think we'll have time to do the gallium again. And the other scans I think are a bit of a waste of time, like the CT and CT and the other one that he does. So I guess what we'll have to do is just judge based on the next 1 or 2 blood tests and see where the PSA is at, and then take it from there.
Lynn, given Tony's low PSA, what are your thoughts on scans since the last scan that he did was, I think, around October of 17?
The likelihood of them picking anything up is too much feedback. Hold on. The likelihood of them picking anything up on the scan is very low. So
yeah,
I'm not sure it would be.
When he did the gallium, his PSA, I think, was about 4. It was about 4. And, I mean, it was. Hello?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry, I said when he did the gallium, the PSA was about 4. And it was shortly after that he went back on ADT. So, I don't know. I mean, so far, the cancer has always been in the lymph nodes. And but you never know, right?
So you said Tony's PSA was 4 when he had the gallium, and it showed lymph node lesion.
Yeah, in the thorax.
So sure, that's a much higher PSA. So the scan is sensitive enough to pick up something.
Yeah.
Right now, if he's way down at I'm sorry, I think you said 0.2 or something.
Well, that right now is just detectable at 0.05.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's pointless doing any scan. So, but the point is that the oncologist wants him to go back on Luperon or Firmagon right away. He doesn't want to wait.
Well, Marguerite, I'm not a statistician, but I know this much from what I've read, and maybe we need to talk to Al Fatt, who is a statistician. But certainly a PSA doubling from, let's say, 0.05 to 0.1 is much different than a PSA doubling from 1 to 2. It all has to do with standard of deviation and coefficient of variation. And don't ask me to explain that stuff, but when I read it, I do get an idea of what they're talking about. And there's really, seriously, quite a difference. Doubling from 0.05 to 0.1 is not nearly as alarming as 1 to 2.
Right.
Well, Marguerite, we need to move on a little bit, but I think probably the hypothesis is the wrong word. The option of monotherapy apalutamide might be a lot more appealing, as Len correctly said to Tony, than going on an LHRH right away, whether it's an agonist or an antagonist. And I think if it were me in Tony's situation, that's probably what I would be pushing to do, particularly since Elida is approved in Canada, apalutamide is approved in Canada. And we can, if you don't know how to get hold of Al Fat, we can certainly connect you if you'd like us to. And just let us know, Len or myself, and we'll introduce you to Al Fat. And then, like I say, I'm sure that we could even somehow or other we could work a connection between the doctors if whoever it is, who's your quarterback doctor right now?
It's Flashner, Dr. Neil Flashner. Oh, I think Daryl knows. Daryl, you're under Flashner as well, aren't you?
No, I'm not Flashner. I'm with Hanson.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you're with Hanson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who I never see.
Oh, you never see? Oh, that's no good.
I know it's no good.
Okay, well, if Fleischner wants to, if Fleischner wants to talk to Dr. O, we'll do our best to make that happen. But I would certainly look at this monotherapy apalutamide as a possibility. So okay, Fleischner's technically Fleischner's a urologist, correct?
Well, they call him uro-oncologist here.
Right, but his qualification is as a surgeon, not as a not in internal medicine.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll pursue. I will pursue that. Yeah. But thank you very much for that. I appreciate that very much.
Pleasure. Okay. So we're gonna move along and stay in Toronto.
Okay.
And,
Rick?
Yes.
Yeah, just to cap off Margarita's reason for being here tonight, I think, is to let guys know that, not to alarm you, but if you are on ADT and you're feeling what you believe is an unusual degree of fatigue, maybe you're feeling a little lightheaded or like you're passing out, maybe some heart palpitation, anything cardiovascular related in the way of symptoms, talk to a cardiovascular doctor, not necessarily an oncologist, but a cardiovascular specialist. Maybe they'll say, well, maybe we should run an ECG and just see what it is. This is just information. We're not trying to panic anybody.
Well, two of the symptoms that Tony had for quite a while prior to going to hospital was he was very lightheaded, and he sort of had sort of dizzy, almost fainty spells, which he, a typical guy, he completely ignored it. But those were two very noticeable warnings, that there was something not quite right. So, I mean, again, it's not, I think this is quite unusual, but the extreme fatigue was definitely an issue. So I just think it's prudent to be aware that, of other side effects from these drugs.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I mean, this is really good information, and I'm really happy that Len just took the time to point that out, because it could save lives. Again, we don't want to scare you, but it's worth being better to be safe than sorry. Daryl, you're in the middle of training for 220-mile bike ride whilst on heavy pain medication. You are amazing, man.
Well, we've got to keep on pushing the limits, right?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tell the guys about this, please.
Well, let me just kind of recap because I can give the guys that don't really know my story. I'll just kind of go back to, I was just looking at an email now. In July of last year, after my 5th ride to conquer cancer, which is a ride from Toronto to Niagara Falls, 2-day ride, I had contacted Rick to speak to you about kind of where I was and what other treatment I should be looking at doing and so on and so forth. And my situation was that they had found a tumor in my neck, and I waited until after the ride to do the radiation, which was 30 days. So I did that in July of 2018, and then I had the radiation done on my neck, on my mandible, the back of my head, where the tumors were. Besides, my situation is that with all my scans, both CT scans and bone scans, I have metastasis in my ribs, my spine, my pelvis, my sternum, and now in my femurs. So it's kind of moved along over a period of time. Anyway, when I got in touch with Rick, I tried to kind of connect with those docs in the US, and unfortunately, Rick, after many emails back and forth and sending my whole resume of where I was at to a couple of the guys, it was an impossibility to actually get to do anything or meet with them or anything to that effect. So that kind of went by the way, and it was months back and forward and so on and so forth, and they were concerned about it. Me coming over there as kind of a Canadian, and I was saying, well, just tell me how much it cost and give me an idea. And like 2 months later, they said it's $800. I said, well, what took so long to kind of tell me that? Anyway, my whole position had changed at that point in time, because I was really looking at what I should be doing with my situation. My pain was getting worse, and I was looking at what other treatments are available for me at this stage of the game. And my oncologist had been bouncing around the radium-223. I'd been speaking to him about lutetium. I had been speaking to him about actinium. I was looking at going to Germany. So all these things were kind of up in the air, and I wasn't sure what I should do. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I started taking some lighter opiates, Dilaudid, and it kind of helped me a little bit with the pain, but the pains kind of seemed to get worse. Anyway, came December, and my wife and I, we went to Florida for 3 weeks, and because the pains were getting worse, my own doctors, not the oncologist, upped my meds to hydromorphine cotin, and this was the start of a nightmare. So I got to Florida, was taking a few of the tablets, and we started upping them and so on and so forth, and my body rejected this oxycodone. It was just a nightmare. I stopped eating. I had no appetite, and I lost 28 pounds while I was in Florida for 3 weeks. I was basically in bed for about the last 3-4 days. I had incredible sweats. I basically cut the meds myself, and literally just made it back to Toronto. Rushed to hospital, was put onto hydration, and thank God I responded to that. And it goes to show that this had nothing to do with my prostate cancer or my metastasis. This had everything to do with the meds. Anyway, I came back here, and one of my friends recommended me to this palliative doctor, and I saw him the day I came out of the hospital. He immediately put me onto fentanyl patch and put me onto dexamethasone, 4 milligrams a day. And it took me probably about 2 weeks and I started getting my energy level back, started putting on weight. From not eating, I was now like a piranha. I couldn't stop eating from this dexamethasone. It had made me high and pushed me, and it was quite incredible how it was like just amazing. Anyway, the bottom line is, as of now, I am. So then, what happened is, about a month ago, I decided to. I did another. I did a blood test, and my blood test showed last month that my PSA went from 4, and I've always had a low PSA, always through my entire journey of this last 7 years. It jumped to 8 in literally a month. Anyway, I am going to the to do another PSA on the 19th of the or the 20th of this month, because I have to get my tube injection, and then they'll check my PSA and obviously my calcium to make sure that I can get the tube injection. But in the meanwhile, about 3 weeks ago, I went to Vancouver, and I was lucky to get in touch with Dr. Dr. Oh my goodness, Dr. Chi. And
Yeah.
I got an appointment to see him through a contact in Vancouver. It was amazing. He spent over an hour with me. We went through a whole slew of things. He basically is running a lutetium trial out of Vancouver. I'm still trying to find out whether there is one in Ontario, but I have not been successful as yet. I've contacted Prostate Cancer Canada. They haven't got back to me as yet. So I'm waiting on that, because it would be easier for me to do lutetium if that's what I'm going to do here in Ontario, as opposed to flying to Vancouver every 6 weeks for one of the needles, and then I have to be in isolation for 5-6 days, and so on and so forth, with the radioactivity and stuff like that. So I'm kind of in abeyance at the moment. What I've decided to do is, first of all, when I was there, Dr. Chi said to me that what I need to consider is that once a person like me starts on opiates, you should be cognizant that you kind of have about a year left. And I was a little bit shocked that he had kind of mentioned that. And I said to him, listen, I appreciate it, but for me, statistics don't really mean much. It's maybe for other people, but not for me. Anyway, he happened to that, that's what he said, and so on. But what his point was to me was that saying that because of where I am at this point in time, and I'm dealing with my pain, but I'm not dealing with the prostate issue, that I should consider looking at the
No
lutetium
problem.
trial. So I said to him, first I have to do my ride, which is coming
Okay.
up on June the 8th and 9th. And then after my ride, I have scans, bone scans and CT scans planned. We will then check to make sure that the organs are clear. And then I will consider looking at the possibility of doing the lutetium. The radium-223 doesn't look like an option for me, because I think if I do the radium-223, then I am exempted from doing lutetium. So that kind of, I'm basically looking at this stage of the game to possibly do the lutetium, but we'll do all that assessment after I get all my scans back, which will be kind of the middle of July, and we'll then go from there.
Well,
So that's about where I'm at.
So that's a heck of a story. I have a couple of questions, and we'll throw it open. Where are you in terms of your scanning? I have a note that back in last year you did some germline genetic testing.
Yeah, I did genetic testing, and the amazing thing is that the genetic testing came back that didn't show that I had the prostate gene for cancer, which was quite amazing. So
Right.
we're still trying to figure that one out. But
Yeah.
I actually did a blood test with Dr. Chi, and he's going to be checking to see if there's anything else. And although it's a trial test, they will let you know if there is anything that is, God forbid, something that would affect me or my family down the road. They will then tell you. Otherwise, if there's no, problem with anything, then it's just a trial genetic test. So I did that with him just as a side note, but nothing really that's going to deal with the prostate cancer itself.
So let me ask you, the tests that you did with Chi, are they going to extract circulating tumors?
No, that was purely a blood draw, and that's all they did. Nobody has recommended any more genetic testing in terms of, taking from the genetic testing that I did initially, where they didn't find the prostate gene or the BRAC 1 or 2. So thank God for that for my family. But that they took out from the storage of the tumor that was done in 2012. So,
Okay.
so no one else is looking at doing
okay.
anything in terms of tumor
Okay. So
biopsies or
so that
testing.
was genomic testing, and
Right.
unfortunately that doesn't tell you a lot for your family. Well, it may do. That's
Well,
wrong.
the BRAC and 1 and 2, that did come back as negative, so that was good.
Yeah. I would have shown. I would have shown up, whether it was germline or genomic.
Right.
I think if it were me, I really would want to get a recent an analysis of a recent solid tumor specimen.
How do I go about doing that?
Well, you can do it with Foundation Medicine. Well, first of all, you might be able to do it. You might want to check with Chi and see if he can run it through Dream Team West, because University of British Columbia is tied into Dream Team West. And if I'm not mistaken, he's part of Dream Team West. And so they have the ability to do it. It's not as quick as Foundation Medicine, but it might be a lot less expensive, because I just don't know with Canada what it would run. We may be able to work something out for you. The way that you do it is you get a bone biopsy from a tumor that's in an easy and non-dangerous place to biopsy. In your case, probably in the somewhere in the pelvis would be good, or possibly in the femur. And what you're going to learn from a recent sample could be very, very different to what you learned in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
From a 2012 sample, because this disease morphs, and your disease definitely morphs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's enough action in your disease that it really would be good to know if you're carrying any mutations, and if you are carrying any mutations, whether they're actionable and there are any drugs that might be. So whilst you may not have germline BRCA,
Mm-hmm.
you may have other mutations that are in the BRCA pathway that have high microsatellite instability, or MMR, what's MMR? Len, multi-something repair,
DNA mismatch repair.
DNA mismatch repair, sorry. So this is what we would be looking for. And I really think it's worthwhile you discussing it with someone, I don't know who, and getting a sample down to Foundation Medicine. And I can connect you to I can connect you to the right people at Foundation Medicine so you can get a sense of what it would cost you, and talk to Chi and tell Chi that, you know, you want to do a genomic sample, a genomic sequence of a recent tumor sample, and see what he says.
Okay, fine. I will definitely send him an email and find out.
See what he says, and then, you know, if you want me to put you in touch with Foundation Medicine, just drop me a line, and I can do that in a heartbeat.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that Foundation Medicine in the US?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Foundation Medicine have labs in Boston and North Carolina, and they're owned. They're now 100% owned by Genentech, which is owned by Roche.
I see.
So,
Okay, perfect.
but I sit on the community council for Foundation Medicine, and I have very good connections there.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
And what we're looking for is an actionable mutation.
Actionable mutation.
Right. And as you probably know, you can get mutations inherited, which is what we look for in germline, or you can make your own mutations, which are the genomic mutations, where we have to take a sample of the tumor. And a sample of the tumor we recommend always being pretty recent, because the tumor changes and becomes resistant.
So would this help me to make a decision whether I do lutetium or not?
It might do, because if we found, let's say, for example, we found a mutation in the BRCA pathway. Len, what was it? CDK12 that Dominic had?
CDK12, yes.
Right. Say we found there are a lot of mutations that are in the BRCA pathway, so you don't have to have BRCA for some of the drugs that they treat the BRCA mutation with to be effective. You can have mutations in their pathway. So if we found a mutation that was in the pathway, or we found other mutations, Len, what else might Daryl find?
Oh boy. Well, things that are actionable.
Yes. High MSI and a mutation, or, you know.
Yeah, the microsatellite instability, the CDK12, the BRCA1, 2. There aren't a lot, unfortunately.
Well, the ITM is another one. I mean, there ATM. Sorry, ATM. There are enough that, you know, there may be something there, and then it may indicate a drug like Keytruda, a PD-1 or a PDL1, anti-PD-1 or anti-PDL1 type of drug. So, you know, and so these are just alternatives that we should be exhausting. You know, and I'm just upset that you never got in to see Chuck, because that's what he would have been doing.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted you to see him, but
unfortunately it never worked out.
No.
Yeah. So basically that's where I'm at right now. So I mean, I'm doing my ride in 3 weeks' time. It's been a little bit hectic to train over here. The weather in Toronto has been pretty shitty, but I'm riding downstairs on my bike, and I'll do what I have to do. You know, it's a big challenge, but this is what kind of keeps me going between my Ride to Conquer Cancer and my Movember action. So you know, that's part of my journey. So we'll see where it takes us. I'll, you know, be in touch with you guys when I finish the ride and kind of give you an update, and then give you an update after my scans, and we'll go from there and see where we're at.
Okay. God bless
Thank you very much for the time, guys. I appreciate it.
God bless you, Daryl. Daryl, even though I know you don't want to do too much before the ride, do consider this getting this sequence as soon as you can.
Yeah, I will send Chi an email today and ask him what he thinks about it, and then I'll ask my oncologist locally what he thinks about it as well.
Okay, and don't hesitate to call me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very much
Pleasure.
appreciated. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I never opened that up. Was there anybody else other than Len and myself, that wanted to say anything to Daryl?
Rick, I was curious about his experience with the opioids he was taking down in Florida, where he lost 28 pounds. What was the cause? Was it a loss of appetite? Was it nausea? Was it something else?
Loss of appetite, and I just didn't eat for like 3 weeks. It was mind-boggling what these opiates can do to you. It literally was something that it's hard to experience. I look at people that are addicted to drugs, and especially this hydromorphine cotin. When I started taking it, and then I upped the dosages before I pulled it, completely. About 2 hours before my next dose, I was like shaking. I couldn't put a zipper together on my jacket. It was that bad. It was, I feel for people that are really addicted to drugs like that, because you are honestly, it's very, very, very difficult. If you don't have the willpower and, to stop something like that, and you just continue, you are on a downward spiral, and it's terrible. It was probably some of the worst times that I've had over my 7-year journey of just dealing with this. There were nights that I was changing my vest 3 times during the night. I was saturated as though I had just come out of a shower. It was that bad, like what these drugs can do to you. And my body just rejected it. And it was very scary, because here I was actually, it had nothing to do with my prostate cancer. This was purely medicinal. And, I think had I stayed in Florida or been there another week, probably my kidneys would have shut down, and other vital organs and so on, and probably rushed to a hospital in the US, charged $100,000, and then they would have started with all tests, had nothing to do with my prostate. So I got lucky that I, thank God, was able to get back to Canada, and went to the hospital, and my palliative guy over here put me on the fentanyl and the dexamethasone, and got me back. And besides that, I'm only on Zoladex and Exgeva. So that's kind of what, under my circumstances of the tremendous spread that I've got basically everywhere. I'm not on too many meds. I'm on 25 of the fentanyl, and now I'm going down to, in fact, I just upped the dexamethasone. I was on 1 and 1.5 every other day, and I just upped it to 2 because I was feeling a little bit kind of lightheaded, and my appetite started waning again. So they put me on 2, especially now that I'm trying to train for the ride. I was a little bit, I didn't have as much energy, so he put me back on 2 every day. So I'm not on 1 and then 1.5. I'm now going to do 2 until I finish the ride, and then they want me eventually to be on 0.05, because the dexamethasone affects your bones, and that's the last thing I need, is to have something else affecting my bones. But at this stage of the game, for the next kind of 3 weeks until I finish the ride, it would be just kind of, careless for me to ride in a situation whereby, I have, first of all, then no energy, and I'm probably, could faint or something to that effect. So we're going to stick with the 2 at the moment until after the ride, and then we'll go back down to the 1.5, and then to the 1, and then hopefully 2.05. Maybe sometime by the end of July.
Daryl, I just want to mention a couple of quick things because I'm just reading back through your history. You did Xtandi for a while, enzalutamide.
For about 2 years.
For 2 years. Did you ever try abiraterone afterwards?
No.
No. That's easy, and it's something that you might want to consider because, I mean, for a small percentage of men, it does work.
Uh-huh.
And it's something that I would certainly be discussing with the docs. And,
Okay.
You may get 8 to 12 months out of it, but you might not get anything at all. So, I mean, that is certainly a consideration. There are some men who have gotten something out of apalutamide after enzalutamide. And there are certainly people that, we were talking about darolutamide before, and one of the things with darolutamide is it does seem to work after Xtandi, but of course it's not approved yet. But I would be thinking about apalutamide apalutamide or abiraterone. Abiraterone works completely differently. But
okay.
I mean, since you got 2 years, which is really good out of Xtandi, you might get something out of apalutamide, and you might get something out of abiraterone. And I'd be looking at that right now because it's just buying you time for the lutetium and for everything else. That's completely independent of getting your genomic sequencing because those
right.
Okay. So
yeah,
definitely be looking at apalutamide and or abiraterone. Would you agree, Len?
Yes, I do, Rick.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention one quick thing, sorry, before I go. Sure. Just to let you guys know that this trial for the lutetium is not 100% that I will get on lutetium. It's a 66% chance that I get onto the trial. So there's no guarantee that if I go to Vancouver and the computer doesn't select me for the lutetium, they don't just give you what's the word, placebo. They tell you that you're not on the trial and they want you just to continue with the standard of care. So that's kind of where I would be if I don't get on the trial.
Right. Yeah. I've just been talking with someone this week who went over to Australia and got lutetium because he wasn't eligible for it here. And about 50% of the people that are doing the lutetium are coming from overseas.
Yeah. So, does anybody know anybody that's done this besides this gentleman now that you're talking about, and how's he been doing?
Well, the guy who chose to do it has pretty mild disease, but he didn't want to do the other alternatives. And and there's another guy who falls into that category. But this, I mean, yes, we know people who have done lutetium, but this is the first person that I know who's gone overseas to Australia to get his lutetium. We knew one guy who did lutetium in Australia, but he was an Australian and he participated in the trial. But he participated very late, and that's the one thing. If you're going to do the lutetium, I'm assuming your blood counts are all pretty healthy.
Yeah, all my counts are pretty good right now. When I came back from Florida, I didn't look too healthy, but I'm back on track now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
they do say that you should do the lutetium sooner than later.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I am where I am right now, so I can't change that.
Well, again, I mean, if it's something you want to do, I'll put you in contact with this fellow in Minnesota who just came back, but he's a completely different kettle of fish to you.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he understands the administrative procedures if you wanted to do it in Australia. But I think there's probably hopefully there's other
Yeah, I mean, I would
alternatives.
either do it in Vancouver, and it is coming to Ontario. It's just a matter of time. So,
Okay.
you know, I'll kind of wait around and see what's happening.
Okay. All right. We
Thank
gotta
you.
move on. Pleasure.
Thank you very, very much.
Let's go for a change of pace here and talk to Roger Smith. And Roger joined us last week. Some of you may remember that he had rather unusual treatment in St. George, Utah. It wasn't exactly clear how extensive his disease was. He got HDR rods, and his disease has come back pretty quickly. We're not really sure to what extent they nailed the disease in the first place in terms of the HDR. There's a tumor that may be evident from his MRI, and so we said, look, why don't you go see a really good GU medical oncologist? And whilst he may not be the guy to treat you right now, he's going to be a terrific guy to give you some direction on your next steps. And
Which is what I
which is exactly what he's going to do. So my first question to you is, do you have a better handle on that tumor and what it is? Because last week you were waiting for some results.
It's in the peripheral zone. It's about 3/8 of an inch or 11 millimeters, whichever preferred measurement you want to use.
Okay. In the peripheral zone of the prostate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So tell us very quickly what your agenda is with Nicholas Vogelsang tomorrow.
Well, yeah, my agenda is first and foremost to find out what I can do as far as alternative and whatever you want to call it. Not truly alternative, that's wording. Complementary, integrative. I want to see what that's about and have that be part of my repertoire if you can. I want to see what else he thinks needs to be done right away. Is this an emergency situation? Is this sit still? I've got two opinions. I need a third to achieve consensus.
Okay.
And was really wondering what I could do for alternate plans. I thought I had my question list right here, and of course, I'm in the middle of a hotel casino trying to sort this out. But that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, hold on to your money tonight.
Yeah, no, they can't have it yet.
As I mentioned to you, whatever questions you have, you definitely want to write them out, and you definitely want to give him a copy of them. That way you're going to be sure that everything will get answered.
Yep.
And you know, it's very, very important. Did you also look into seeing Dr. Lewendo whilst you were in Vegas?
I'm sorry?
Did you look into seeing Brian Lewendo when you were in
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't spoken to him. I've gone to the website and seen what it is about, but that's the extent of it so far.
Okay, because I think he's the guy that's going to be a lot more helpful to you on complementary and integrative treatments. And you know, I don't know where Vogelsang stands on complementary and integrative. My guess is that he's fairly open to it because I think he works with Lewenda. But you know, if that's a major thrust, then you've got to be pretty well prepared in case he pushes back on you.
Right.
and you know, you've got to make it very clear that, you know, you're looking to him largely for the guidance on your conventional treatment, but that you also want to be considering complementary. Don't ever use the term alternative. Lose that.
No, I knew better than
that from your vocabulary, Roger.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Okay. So anybody want to suggest to Roger any questions?
What I should be asking?
Yeah, what he should be asking. Exactly. Anybody got any suggestions?
Roger, you said you had two opinions, two differing approaches, but I'm not sure I understood what they were.
Okay. My urologist, as soon as he found out that my PSA had gone up and then gone up yet again, and I'm on testosterone therapy and I was taken off of that in order to see if that would calm down the PSA. And after having 3 HDR brachytherapies, my first PSA was 2.2. Then it continued to climb to 3.5, and my last one was 3.9. Now, my oncologist says, well, you're still in the normal range. Let's wait and see. My urologist says, hey, you know what? This is not good. Here are the people who can give you a prostatectomy. And I'm thinking, okay, wait a second. I need something in between the two here, or at least consensus. I'm fine with any opinion as long as it's a well thought out, well considered, and I'd like to form a team if at all possible, so I get an idea of where to head best. The urologist said, well, let's wait until the MRA. You know, nothing's going to show up on that anyway because it's too soon with these kind of numbers. Well, sure enough, on the MRI, yes, it did show up, and it shows up appreciably. And it has been graded. I think they have grades 1 through 5. 5 highly likely, 4 is likely, and the professional opinion was likely this tumor being shown is cancerous. And part of the problem is there's a term called trabeculation, and it's interfering with my bladder function. And so one way or another it's going to have to be addressed, or otherwise the urine is going to start backing up into the kidneys and give me problems there too. So that's what I meant about two different opinions, because I thought once my oncologist saw that the MRI showed positive results or negative results, depending on your take, that he would get back with me, and he was fine with my appointment clear being in July, and I need some feedback sooner than that.
Right. And I just want to clarify, gents, that when Roger says oncologist, he's referring to his radiation oncologist. So, yeah, I mean, I find that a very strange response from your rad-onc, especially when there is this shadow or this lesion in the peripheral prostate area, that he's just saying, well, let's just wait and see. I don't get it. I also don't get how they never saw it in the first place, but that's another. So, anybody on the call? I mean, what advice would you be giving Roger in terms of, because Roger, remember, is not that experienced in dealing with these docs, and what sort of thoughts do you have in how to address these issues with Dr. Fogelsang tomorrow?
I would ask him just to confirm what I believe is a widely held belief. Ask him to confirm the fact that surgery is not a good idea for someone who's already had radiation therapy. It's an extremely difficult surgery and fraught with complications, likely not to be successful. So certainly talk to him about that. At least that'll narrow down your options.
Yeah, that very good point. Anyone else? Come on, You guys all have plenty to say. Give Roger some help here.
Probably see a GU medonc.
Well, this is what this guy is tomorrow, Dennis.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yes, Vogelsang is a GU medonc. That's exactly where we've sent him.
Okay.
And a very
The other
good
thing
one.
is bring someone with you if you can.
Oh yeah, my trusted partner of many a year is with me.
Okay, good. And don't be shy to record the conversation. Ask Dr. Vogelsang if he minds if you record it, and if you have a smartphone, record it so that you can re-listen to questions later. And if your partner can take the notes, then that would be much better than you taking the notes.
Okay, I will instruct her to take the notes. To be a secretary, so maybe she's even good at it. We'll tell her to practice her old shorthand.
There you go. Any other good suggestions for that was a very good suggestion from Dennis. Any other good suggestions? Okay. Well, Roger, we are anxious to hear how you do. Did you talk to Tony Crispino, or did you reach out to Tony Crispino?
No, it was difficult enough to get the appointment with Vogelsang. I was so glad to finally get through the telephone hack that they have at an answering service there. But we got through.
Good man.
And so, no, right now my tool of thrust has been Mr. Vogelsang. After tomorrow, I will probably talk to Luenda and the other fellow you just mentioned as soon as I can.
Well, I might even I sent you his number, you have it, but I might even give Tony a call tonight and just give him a call. And because he'll take your call, he knows who you are, and say, look, I'm seeing Dr. Vogelsang tomorrow. What do you think I should be asking him? Because he's a very, very good advocate. So I don't think it would hurt you to reach out to him before you go in and see Dr. V. Okay?
Okay. All right. That works.
All right. And then talk to us next week, or let me know by email or something. But I feel much more comfortable. I think we're going to get you on the right path, and that's really the best thing that we can do for you.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Pleasure. Okay, we've got Ken Anderson and we've got Paul Frieda. So let's go. Ken, I think just give us a quick update on yours, and then we'll finish up with Paul.
Yeah, well, mine's not that difficult. I finally did get the result after a week and a couple days for my last PSA, which was, a couple weeks ago. But it went up in 30 days. The increase was 1.12 to 1.41. The funny thing is my testosterone went from 28 to 8. And that was right after a Lupron shot. So it just shows that, on a 90-day, on a 3-month Lupron shot, the tail end of the Lupron shot, I think PSA, it may affect it next month. I anything out of going off Casedex or bicalutamide. I thought maybe, because in February, bicalutamide actually dropped my PSA from January by just a little bit. It was 0.08 to 0.78 in February. And then I'd asked Paul if it'd be okay just to try to go off bicalutamide for a month and see if it did anything to my PSA, and it didn't. Yeah, it's gone up 3 months consecutively from 0.78 to 1.12 to 1.41. So, at the moment, I'm going to take your advice, Rick. I don't know why this thing's ringing. I'm going to go ahead and start one of the second lines, and I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go ahead. And I have an appointment scheduled for next Tuesday for the guided high dose brachytherapy. I want to talk to the guy, but as you stated, I don't think, it's not like a fix-all. My cancer is metastatic, as you stated. So, Provenge going. Kind of where I'm at.
Okay, guys, did you get most of that, or do you need? Can we? I know because Ken's sort of cutting in and out just a little bit.
Yeah, I need some translation.
That. My phone, because I think the mic on this tablet's not so good.
Yeah, I think that probably is probably what's happening. So whilst Ken's, you're going to call in, Ken? Is that what you're going to do?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so I'll just review that it appears that when Ken had his last PSA test before this one, that it was at the very tail end of the Lupron chart, and his PSA was up to around 28.
Testosterone.
Testosterone was up to about 28, and this time, even though his PSA has gone up to 1.41, his testosterone is down to 8. And as Ken says, that's probably something to do with what happens at the tail end of a 90-day testosterone, a 90-day Lupron shot. I mean, everybody's different. I'm sure we all use up that Lupron at different rates. And so it's quite possible. Now, the question is what to do next. And second-line antiandrogen seems to be a good option. And Ken's thinking about apalutamide. And also considering HDR brachy, because there may be some evidence of prostate cancer still in the prostate, despite having had the prostate radiated previously. In a nutshell, that's the story. Len, did you want to comment?
It's a needle-guided therapy. It's not a seed-in. Did you get
I
that,
didn't hear
Len?
that again, Rick.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. Say that again, Ken.
It's got needle-guided high-dose brachytherapy, which
That's
isn't
right. Same as rods. Correct. Right.
So my understanding is that you don't want to radiate an area of the prostate that's already been radiated.
I know they go in, Lynn, they go in and actually inject the prostate with a radioactive isotope. It's not a seed implant. And it's not like IMRT. They go in and actually shoot wherever the cancer. I have to have an MRI and a biopsy and pathology to confirm that it's cancer. And then they go in with some kind of a long thing on a needle with a microscope, I guess, and go in there and shoot radioactive material right into the gland itself. I haven't met with.
So it's almost like spot radiation?
That's what it is.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that seems like a pretty good option.
Yeah, I don't know.
Along with the second line, since radiation works best with ADT, adding the second line antiandrogens is a good idea.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to throw Provenge in with that, probably at the same time. I'm going to organize them all and kind of do them all at once.
Who locally is going to prescribe the apalutamide for you?
Probably Arizona Oncology. The same place I've been going with Tanya Cortez.
Okay. Okay.
Anything I need to watch for? It's pretty simple. Just take the pill and.
Oh, your buddy just came on the line. Ken. From down under.
Good evening, afternoon, or whatever it is over there.
Good evening to you. How are you? It's late afternoon. How are you?
I've just dropped the kids off, and yes, early morning here. Living the dream as always.
Well, what I'm gonna do, I want to give you a little bit of time. We've got half an hour left. We'll finish up with Ken. We'll go to Paul Frieder, and then we'll come to you, and you can tell us how you did with Larry Fong.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay. So Ken, anything else?
No, that's about it.
Well, I'd like to, if it were me, I think I would be wanting to get onto a second line antiandrogen sooner rather than later. So that would probably be top of my list. And second, it would be the Provenge, and third would be the HDR procedure.
Gotcha. How tough do you think that second line is going to be? Because, I have like a 160-mile hike with my little sister through the Olympic National Park in 30 days.
Yeah.
Should I wait? I don't want to
I know. If it were me, I'd be starting it right away and deal with it. But that's what I would do. Len, what would you do?
We're talking about starting radiation right away or waiting?
Apalutamide.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant, apalutamide. Well, Ken, the only thing to consider, if you want Provenge, you're going to need to do that first, because apalutamide is going to crush your PSA, and you're not going to qualify for the
oh, good point.
Provenge.
Okay. So I'll get that ball rolling first. That may buy me a little bit of time, and then I can go do my hike, and we're going to kind of put you on the back burner, Rick.
Okay. No, that's a good plan. Len is thinking more clearly, but that's because he just had dinner and I haven't eaten yet. So he's thinking more clearly than I am. All right. Anybody else want to throw 2 cents in? Who else wants to ask questions? Talk to Ken Anderson in Phoenix. Anybody else? No? Anybody? No other thoughts on how to sequence these treatments or questions?
Oh, Rick, you froze. Nope. I don't know if you can hear me, Rick, but you're out of action. No one else can hear Rick, right?
I can't hear him.
Yeah.
His picture's frozen.
Right.
He's still out.
It's a terrible pose too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. The order, assuming you want Provenge, Ken, you want Provenge first, and then get on the apalutamide. As soon as your Provenge is approved, I guess you could theoretically start the apalutamide, unless your doc says you should wait till it's finished.
Can I do Provenge and the needle-guided brachytherapy at the same time? Well, I can ask the doc.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they would want you to do that. I'm just saying. So it should be Provenge, apalutamide, and then radiation. Radiation can certainly happen while you start apalutamide.
Right.
Well, while we're waiting for Rick to resurface, Cam, do you want to relate your story with Larry Fong, or do you want to wait for Rick?
I suppose we better wait for Rick, seeing he's had a vested interest from day one of knowing I've got prostate cancer.
Okay, while we wait for Rick and we'll wait for Cam, was there anyone else who had anything they wanted to talk about?
Hey, Lynn, there was a guy in the middle. Did you forget about him? There's someone else that Rick had referred to that Rick had on the list. I don't remember
Yeah,
what his name.
Paul. Yeah, I was on the list. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Paul. You might as well start.
Well,
Yeah, I'm back, guys. Sorry, I don't know what's happened, but my connection got cut off. I'm sorry about that. But go ahead, Len. Back to you.
Okay, Cam wanted to wait for you to return to start his story, so he can start now. Go ahead, Cam.
Okay, so I'm not sure what Ken has filled you in on, but obviously it was, from my perspective, it was certainly a very blunt and brutal appointment. So he doesn't, in Australia, the GPs and medical oncologists tend to try to soften the blow about the reality of your prognosis, but over in the US, that you guys obviously don't. So yes, he made no short point of the fact that I'm here for a good time, not a long time at this rate. So that was a bit hard to digest, because getting that from my oncologists in Australia is almost impossible. But I'd rather hear the truth. Well, there was a lot of feedback then. I'd rather hear the truth than live in denial. So he raised the prospect of Provenge. He then used some of your baseball terminology and says, but if we want to swing for the fence, we'd combine it with some other sort of checkpoint inhibitors such as Keytruda and the like. And that's really where we left off. But, unless a miracle happens, I'm certainly going to be here. I'm not going to see my 5-year-old turn 20. That's for sure. So, yeah, I walked away from it being happy that I've been able to talk to him, but certainly it's taken me 5 days to stop being extremely depressed.
Well, I have to say that of all the docs that I've ever met in this country, he is one of the best when it comes to presenting information. And so it's sort of interesting that you found that he was that direct that it disturbed you, because I think that he's gentler than most of the docs can. At the same time, cure is not a word that should be, unfortunately, in your vocabulary. I mean, for that matter, it's probably not in the vocabulary of any of the men who are on this call today, because if you've got a 4 in your number and your disease comes back, we don't know how to cure prostate cancer. What we know how to do is to manage it, and to manage it for as long as we possibly can. And I think that if Larry is talking about the possibility of Provenge and Keytruda, I'm not quite sure where the Keytruda comes from, but it's certainly worth looking into it if he feels it's appropriate. Then those are good options.
Well, I certainly didn't go into the appointment thinking that there's going to be a miracle cure. I've accepted that fact quite a long time ago.
Right.
I said to him, my objective is to gain 15 years somehow, which would take my youngest son, who's 5 now, to his 20th birthday. So
Right.
That is my objective, and hopefully, but both my medical oncologist here and, I've spent my 25 years of my career reading people's faces. Obviously Larry's face thought that 15 years was a pretty pretty long shot. So that was more my shock. It's not that there's no cure. I'm well aware of that. What I want to do is find any way possible to gain myself 15 years. And I'll do anything, whether it means I have to fly to San Francisco 3 or 4 times and do this Provenge at some ridiculous cost, then I'll do it. But I suppose I need to keep my options open. And the great thing about being able to see Larry was that door was not open, 3 weeks ago. So I'm seeing my medical oncologist, Ben Tran, here tomorrow afternoon. He will have received Larry's report, and then the fun begins, I suppose. We decide on what we do, because my current trajectory was simply bicalutamide until my PSA started to rise more significantly, then move on to second gen, like apalutamide, abiraterone or enzalutamide. But we might throw in this Provenge and some other, swing for the fence sort of stuff, because really I need to, if you look at me now, I feel as fit as I did 25 years ago. So I want people to hit me with whatever they've got while I'm still able to take the punches, rather than wait and look back and say, shit, I wish I'd done that.
So there's a couple of things I want to address with you. The first is, what type of sequencing have you done? What type of analysis of your tumor, either germline or somatic or genomic, have you done?
Well, it's not as big a thing. Trying to get this stuff done over here is not as easy. You guys all talk about it like it's a natural. Over here, I had to kick and scream to get it done. So my original histopathology report following the radical prostatectomy said that germline testing or familiar cancer testing was highly recommended. So I had that done, and there was nothing came back. I then screamed that I wanted a larger panel. So at Peter Mac, we had my oncologist did what they call the comprehensive cancer panel. Now that came back with no somatic. Then I had P10 loss and some other TPEG something. So nothing that when my medical oncologist read that now this was, I think, middle of last year, when he read that, he said there's nothing in the report that is actionable now. And so that's where we've left it here, and I feel like I'm flogging a dead horse every time I raise anything about further testing here. So no, I think the problem with my cancer is that it's that introduct or whatever, but IDs, whatever, I can't remember. I've got so many numbers and names going around in my head, it becomes a blur. But because I have this viral cancer type is where everyone draws the conclusion that I'm stuffed. So, and the fact that I was 43 when I got it.
Okay, so your cancer is, I wasn't aware of that. Your cancer is introductal?
Yeah, if you give me 2 seconds, I'll, so I don't give you the wrong information. As I said, my head has been in a bit of a blur.
Yeah, no, don't worry. It's,
okay.
Look, if you've done the testing, that's fine. We just want to make sure that you've done the testing, and if it was done as recently as 6 or 8 months ago, then there's no reason to do it again, because it's not going to morph that much in that period of time.
And that's basically what Ben said, yeah.
Right, and one of the things I'd like to discuss, if it's okay by you, is, what is the right time horizon? I mean, I understand why Larry might have rolled his eyes when you said 15 years, because I think that most men in this country, when diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer, as much as they would like to consider 15 years, they find it difficult to do so because the evidence isn't there. And I want to throw that discussion out. And guys, I want you to be a little vocal. I mean, how do you respond to what Cam is saying? You know, I mean, we understand your age and we understand all of that, but I'd like to just get some feedback, because I think, Cam, that's a problem. I don't know how else. We'd love to say you had 20 years or 25 years. We don't see it. That's the problem.
I can contribute something. I can empathize with Cam in that my daughter is 12 and I'm in my 5th year of remission, and I'm praying that I can get 6 more years to get her into college, and then I sort of feel that my job has been done once she gets to college. So I don't know if I'm going to survive for 6 more years. In fact, my intermittent my Lupron holiday looks like it's going to end soon, because my recent blood test shows that testosterone is moving. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I understand your feelings of, you'd like the survival long enough to get, to give all the love you possibly can to your daughter. And I empathize with that, very deeply. So, but none of us know how long we're going to survive. We just try to make the best decisions we can when they come up. Hopefully we have the very best doctors talking to us, because that can make an enormous difference. But having the best advice, and so that would be my advice to you: is make sure you've got the best damn GU-onc, medical onc you can find, and then just hope you'll get as much survival as possible.
Yes, I appreciate that feedback. I mean, along the journey, and it's been a pretty rough journey for 2 years with the various treatments I've had. My first medical oncologist was a complete dud, who told me that you're not going to die of prostate cancer. But my second medical oncologist has been pretty good, has listened to, things that have been suggested outside of the norm. And he's also been the one that's been able to get me an appointment with Larry Fong. So, I think I've got a decent network. I'm not going to pee in your pocket, Rick, but you've been fantastic along the journey. I probably wouldn't have even done the 6 rounds of docetaxel if it wasn't for this network. So I certainly keep my options open, and I'm not delusional in the fact that the cancer's got a very good chance of killing me, but it also hasn't met someone as stubborn as me too. So I will do whatever I can, and I'd rather go down fighting than looking back and saying I wish I'd done that treatment.
Sure. Anyway, who else has something that they'd like to contribute to this discussion?
Hey, Rick. Hi, guys. I don't know. I wouldn't be negative, and I would hope for the positive. When I was diagnosed 4.5 years ago, they thought I had wide, gigantic PSA, and my metastasis lit up like a Christmas tree. The whole story. I had a pretty good response. It's 4.5 years later. I'm still doing okay, and I haven't even gone on to Xtandi and apalutamide. The newer trials run into the idea of how lutetium is going to work out, and I see a lot on the pipeline. I think that there is some kind of hope for us. I don't think we all have death sentences necessarily. I mean, the evidence is not there yet, but when you look at the cancer statistics, they're like 5 years from a few years ago. As far as I see, I don't see there are people who are right now in treatment or newer treatments. You don't know where they're going to be 5 years from now, and you don't know where you're going to be if you're lucky. So I think realistically, 15 years is a difficult shot. I think it'd be difficult for me, but I'm hoping for the same, and I don't consider it impossible. That's really my 2 cents.
Thank you, Larry.
Good. Yeah.
Who else has? Anyone else have some thoughts on this?
Cam, could you please repeat what somatic mutations you said they found? Loss of P10, and did you say TP53?
Hang on, I'm just getting the comprehensive cancer panel. So, no somatic mutations detected. TMPRSS2-ERG gene fusion detected consistent with prostate, blah, blah, blah. P10 FAS, loss of heterogeneity detected with prognostic significance.
Okay. That's good. I'm glad
And as I
didn't
said,
hear.
my medical oncologist said, yeah, there's nothing actionable about that.
True. But I'm glad I didn't hear TP53, because that combination with loss of P10 is definitely not good, but you're okay there.
I like a bit of good news. Thanks, Len.
Yeah. I would echo Larry's suggestion to remain positive. All of us need to remain positive right to the very end, because it doesn't do us any good to not be positive, to worry. They just recently did a study where they said worrying is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you worry about what's going to happen to you if you have prostate cancer, it turns out those guys who do that have a worse prognosis. So you definitely want to remain positive and optimistic. I think, according to Larry Fung, from what he has said, it makes sense to me to go with the immunotherapy, the swinging for the fences, going for the home run, because the immunotherapy is, regardless of the fact that the percentage of prostate cancer guys who have a durable remission is on the low side. It's in a case like yours, the traditional treatments are definitely not going to take you out 15 years. I think only immunotherapy has a chance to do that.
Yeah, appreciate that, Len. And that's why I think, I'm, well, depending on what my medical oncologist says tomorrow, I'm certainly looking to do the Provenge. I've just got to find the financial capability of it, and B, the logistics of how I get from Melbourne to San Francisco 3 times to have these infusions, where I've got a family of 3 young boys. So it's not going to be a small feat doing it. But as you said, I've got to try these other things, because that's the only way I'm going to get to that magic number.
Well, there's a couple of. I had a fairly long conversation with Ken this morning, and one of the things that came up with the Provenge is that I know that Dendrion has been talking about opening a lab in the Southern Hemisphere. And I think I would be wanting to figure out if that's going to happen, and if it is, when it's going to happen. Because it would certainly make your life a heck of a lot easier if that were an option.
It would make it an absolute no-brainer in terms of happening, because
right.
My biggest issue is how I coordinate the 16, 17-hour flight back and forth.
Right. So I think that we've got to nail that one down, and I suggested that Ken reach out to Joel Novak, he's a patient advocate who has a direct relationship with Dendrion, and get some information from them. So I mean that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're going to do it here, you need to get yourself a package price, because there's lots of add-ons. And I don't know what, when they give you a price for the Provenge, probably doesn't include taking the blood. It includes processing it and putting the immunotherapy, the treated blood back into you, the treated white cells back into you. But there are a lot of other issues. So I think, we've got to look at sort of a complete whole price. And, in the interim, it may make sense, since you haven't even started a second-line antiandrogen, that it may make sense to start that second-line antiandrogen at some point soon.
I'm actually thinking that might be what my medical oncologist, after his discussion with Larry, says to me tomorrow, because although my PSA is going nowhere fast, and bicalutamide seems to be holding it in place, it wouldn't surprise me if he suggested that, which might buy some time in terms of working out the logistics of this Provenge. And they're obviously not going to factor in the exchange rate too, where I think one of our Australian dollar buys about 65 US cents at the moment. So that's not looking flash either.
So do you know why Larry recommended? You say Larry talked about second-line antiandrogens, Provenge and pembrolizumab. Do you know why he recommended the pembrolizumab? What was it about your numbers that made that a viable option?
It was in the context of, we want to do everything possible to get to that 15-year mark. So he said that these blockers, or whatever they're called, PARP inhibitors or the like, adding these to Provenge does have the possibility of enhancing Provenge.
Oh, okay.
So that was the first part of the conversation. The second part of the conversation was, well, if you're here having these extreme treatments that only have a 10 to 20% chance of adding some benefits, but those benefits can be substantial, then we might as well try something like olaparib or something. I think that's the name that he mentioned, as another one to add to it. So
so let me explain to you. So the PARP inhibitor is olaparib, and there are 3 other PARP inhibitors that are available right now. And the PARP inhibitor is a different type of drug to the Keytruda or the pembrolizumab. They work in very different ways. And normally these drugs are prescribed if you have a certain genetic aberration that has been identified. And what I hear Larry saying is, well, we haven't really identified any of these genetic aberrations, but these drugs can work well in the presence of Provenge. And so, if you're here, maybe we should try them as well. And I don't know about that. I just don't know. I would want to drill down a lot more with Larry and with Ben to understand why they're saying that.
And I will too. Yeah, I will, because Larry...
It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, and hoping something's going to stick, but we just don't know what.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm seeing Ben, because I think between Ben and Larry are polar opposites. So Ben, my oncologist here, is more of the person who says to me, if I was in your situation, I'd be more of a defeatist. So he's more of a lay down your sword and just accept your fate, where Larry is picking up another sword and a spear and something else.
Right.
So I think I've got the polar opposites in terms of oncologists to work with, which I consider, as a betting man, I would say that they're pretty good odds if I've got both extremes of the spectrum. So whereas me, I probably sit further towards the Larry side, which was why I always had issues with my oncologist here, because I just want to be more aggressive about this. I'd rather go down fighting than sit in the corner sucking my thumb. So hopefully between the two of them we can get something that isn't going to kill me and does add some years to my life.
Right. I mean, there are definite disadvantages to some of these drugs. I mean, Len and I have been discussing them this week, and I think we raised them with you because there are mutations which evidently you don't have that can accelerate the tumor. What were those mutations, Len? Do you recall?
Oh, let's see.
Was it EGR? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I know it's, but there are, and at least we know you don't have those mutations. But it's not, you know, these drugs are not a walk in the park. And I just really, I'm really wrestling with what is the reason to take a PARP inhibitor, or what is the reason to take an anti PDL or PDL1 drug, and I'm just not sure what that is, and that's what I would really like for you to gen up on and be able to understand and share with us if you can.
I will.
Rick, I do.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, that's exactly why I'm on this network, because most of the time you guys have steered me in the right direction. So I'm by no means an expert at any of this, and it's certainly not living the dream from my perspective, but I don't want to jump into anything. So
Okay.
I'd rather share with the network and see where it goes from there. It was great having Ken there with me, because, you know, when you get bombarded by someone like Larry, who, you know, has more terminologies in his head than I ever want to, you know, Ken remembered things that I don't remember, and I've got to now just take a step back and try and absorb everything that's happened, because it's been a pretty whirlwind 2 weeks.
Okay.
You know,
Rick,
I was going to... Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, just quickly. I remember one of the mutations was EGFR, which
EGFR, that's it, yeah.
epidermal growth factor receptor, EGFR1, I believe.
Yeah,
and I mean, Cam doesn't seem to have that. And
right.
just one other thing. Is Cam on the phone?
Yeah, I'm on the phone now.
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
No, go let Len finish. Let Len finish. It's all right.
Yeah, okay, so you guys can't see what I just put in the chat box, but I wanted to know if this is what Larry Fong was recommending, because I know he's involved in a clinical trial combining SD101 with Keytruda. The text I put in the chat box pertains to advanced melanoma, but it shows a 70% overall response rate, which is remarkable in melanoma. And I'm pretty sure Larry is involved with a similar trial for prostate cancer. Do you recall that SD101 discussion with Larry?
I raised it. Ken, can you remember what the response was?
You know, he did not specifically state that part of the trial, but it is in fact in my head the one he was referring to.
Okay.
So
All right, go ahead,
in
Ken.
my head, in my head, that's the one he was referring to. But what I was stating is that Cam's genomic sequencing was from his prostate, which was, you know, they removed it in February of 2017. So it is like 2.5 years. It's not like a current. I mean,
okay.
I think it's beneficial. I don't know where they'd get it from, because he doesn't have a prostate. He doesn't have bone mets. I don't know where they'd find. I don't know where they'd get it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I didn't realize. It didn't dawn on me. I should have thought about that. I mean, it is an old sample, and it would be great if we could get a new sample, but your PSA isn't high enough, and you don't have enough tumor burden to come up with a sample from anywhere. That is an issue.
Yeah, that's what I've been told too, because I had PET scan, you know, in November last year, and nothing showed. So my PSA is 0.067 at the moment.
Right. Len, I didn't see anything in the chat window, so nothing came through to me in the chat window.
Oh yeah, I noticed it says waiting for, let's see.
The system's screwy today, so
Yeah, yeah, it says waiting for
worries.
something. Well,
All right,
okay,
look,
I'll email it to you.
I do think, Lynn, he was pretty optimistic with the results that he was seeing on that trial.
Yeah.
I could tell in his face that it was something that was abnormal. The results.
Yeah,
So,
very exciting stuff.
I think so. I don't know what that equates to in percentage-wise for prostate cancer, but, you know, I thought it was not the norm.
Okay. Guys, if I just want to give, it's 10 minutes after, and I do want to give Paul a few minutes here. Paul, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here, but I'll wait till next Monday.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's that urgent. I'll wait till next Monday. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you yielding the time to Cam. That's good of you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Cam, you are back in Australia at this point, right?
I'm sitting at my desk, yes, after having dropped the kids off to school, yes. I rushed back because I forgot the time zone, so I can probably join at this time, you know, for the last half hour each week, you know, is what I'm trying to organise.
Okay. Well, that's on this call, and then our Monday call is later. So our Monday call starts right around now for you.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So you will be able to reach the Monday call, and you're very welcome. Love to hear your voice. Our Monday call starts at 5 o'clock Pacific, which I guess is, and it's now 10 after 5 Pacific. So that gives you, that'll allow
10 a.m. here.
10 a.m. by you. Okay.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Well, we're going to close out at this point. Is there any other urgent business that needs to be considered?
Simply an invitation to the Speaking Freely call that occurs Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where men discuss the emotional issues or the feeling issues, not the technical side. So Rick is there. He's just sitting quietly in the back, biting his fingernails. We'd like to invite everybody to stop by.
Yeah, please stop by. It's a sweet call. We usually have a pretty good time. There are some good issues. And I have to say, Rich, that some of the discussion today actually would sit well on your call as well, don't you think?
Actually, I arrived late. I had an in-person support call, so I caught like the last 20 minutes or so of this.
The discussions about expectations and life expectations when you get diagnosed. That's the sort of thing we talk about on Rich's call, correct?
It is, and I read an entertaining article about depression, and I planned on bringing that up because depression's actually a useful evolutionary trait for survival, is one of the studies that they're coming out with.
All right.
We can kick that around a bit.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah. That'll be a good one to talk about. Get depressed, live longer. Is that what they're saying?
The synopsis is depression focuses your attention on a single issue that is interfering with your normal life.
I see.
And what you got to do is allow your mind to pursue that, as opposed to, oh, I'm depressed, give me 2 pills and call me in the morning. So it's not 100% in every case, but they have found it enough that it's up for serious discussion. They're doing some retrospective studies.
Okay. All right. Somebody just joined us, but it might have been somebody who dropped off. Somebody just call in?
Yes, Rick, Larry Kai.
Larry Kai. Oh, this call started at 3 o'clock, Mr. Kai. I'm so sorry we missed you. We're just finishing.
Okay.
All right, but join us next Monday when it will start at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, I need to get out and get a little exercise in before we lose the sun. So we're going to call it a day. We'll get this posted up by tomorrow, and I'll talk to you all soon. Good night, everybody.
Happy Memorial.
Bye.
Good
Good
night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. See you, Sylvester, Rick, everybody else.
Bye.